In late 2000, Armin Meiwes, a man desperate to find someone willing to reenact a murder, posted an ad on the dark web. He was looking for a victim who would share in a bizarre fantasy to be killed and eaten by the perpetrator himself. Meiwes was fascinated by the idea of cannibalism and was prepared to do anything to achieve this goal. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a strange fantasy, but the ad caught the attention of another person named Bernd Jürgen. What Meiwes did not know was that this agreement would turn into the worst nightmare of his life. The arrangement was strange, even shocking, but in the end, it marked the beginning of a tragic end no one could have foreseen. As Meiwes' thoughts raced through his mind, he received a response from Bernd Jürgen, a young man looking for a way to end his personal suffering. The two communicated online and became more determined to carry out this horrific idea. They met in a secluded place, where the air was thick with mist and doubt. Through their words, there were signs of a fateful decision. The first steps toward the crime would be more than just satisfying Meiwes' primal urge. It would be the pursuit of something irreversible. But what did this mean for Bernd? Was he truly ready for what was about to happen? That meeting was the beginning of hell. On that dark day in February 2001, Armin Meiwes met Bernd Jürgen at his home in the German town of Rothenburg. The place was quiet, but something unnatural filled the air. It wasn't just a meeting between two people, but a meeting between two individuals agreeing to a brutal massacre. In that moment, Bernd hesitated, but he had already fallen into Meiwes' trap. No one could have imagined how fantasies and reality could merge in such a horrifying way. Everything was prepared. Nothing was left to chance, and the two men were ready to commit a crime that would make headlines for years to come. As the conversation between Meiwes and Bernd continued, Bernd began to feel anxious, but Meiwes was determined to carry out his plan, and he expressed this clearly. In a moment of weakness, Bernd agreed to be killed and eaten, an agreement that seemed more like consenting to an experiment. It was a horrifying moment. While Meiwes felt his passion intensify, there were signs of regret shadowing Bernd. But after all those conversations, retreat became impossible. The agreement had been made, and at that moment, the irreversible journey began. Armin Meiwes left nothing to chance. While he continued his daily life, preparations behind closed doors were escalating. He bought sharp knives, a camera to document the crime, and other items that made the entire scene feel like a chapter from a horror film. There was no room for hesitation. With every step he took, the moment he had been waiting for drew nearer. He was manifesting his strangest dream in a terrifying way. But no one knew what he would do after filming the video and fulfilling his ominous fantasy. The terrifying moments grew more ominous as Meiwes entered the next phase of his plan. These moments were filled with both physical and psychological torture. As Meiwes attempted to sever part of Bernd's body as agreed, the situation began to take a horrifying turn. But what no one had anticipated was that Bernd was suffering from immense pain and struggling to interact with the crime unfolding around him. There was hesitation, as if time slowed between the agony and confusion. Was this truly what he wanted? Or had his consent been, in the end, nothing more than an escape from an unbearable reality? The moment of the slaughter was irreversible. Meiwes, who had planned this day down to the finest detail, began executing the crime with brutal efficiency. After several failed attempts, he finally succeeded in killing Bernd, who had now become a part of Meiwes' dark scheme. As Bernd took his last breaths, the video camera captured every moment. In that instant, Meiwes felt a mixture of pride and terror. The end was near, but even at this moment, no one fully understood the true horror that was about to unfold. After the crime was complete, Meiwes was in a strange state of euphoria. It wasn't just the act of killing. There was something else, something stronger. He began cooking parts of Bernd's body and eating them slowly, in a state of horrific enjoyment. As he did so, he filmed everything, documenting every moment. These were the moments that symbolized the culmination of a plan he had meticulously prepared. But as time passed, a feeling of guilt began creeping into his heart. As Meiwes consumed his victim's flesh, the camera continued to record every horrifying detail. The footage was unnervingly real, and the person in the video was no longer just a victim. Bernd, even after death, had become a part of this gruesome film Meiwes was making. Slowly, Meiwes began to question the enormity of what he had done. But deep down, he knew that the video would forever stand as evidence of this monstrous crime. As the days passed, Meiwes began to feel increasing internal pressure. He had thought he would feel relief after committing the crime, but the reality was different. Guilt haunted him, and images of Bernd's corpse, which had once been fresh, now filled his mind. Was this crime worth it? Questions swirled in his head, but he knew there was no going back now. Armin Meiwes had managed to dispose of the initial evidence, but part of the crime still lingered. He began getting rid of the remaining body parts he had not consumed. He did everything in his power to erase any trace of the crime he had committed. As the police began to close in on this dark hole in his life, Meiwes was doing everything he could to cover his tracks. The disappearance of Bernd Jürgen remained an unsolved mystery. As the media and the public's pressure grew, the police began their investigation. With forensic analysis, evidence started to surface. One key piece of evidence the video Meiwes had filmed was the first tangible proof confirming the murder. At that moment, everything began to feel very real. As Meiwes struggled to cover up his crime, the police were closing in. One day, German authorities raided his home. He was arrested in an unsettling silence. In that moment, Meiwes realized that there was no escape from the consequences. The game was over, but the arena was already stained with blood. The trial of Armin Meiwes began in 2002, where the horrific evidence was presented before the court. Videos, recordings, and even testimonies that everyone heard were enough to send chills down their spine. The debate centered around whether the crime could truly be considered murder, given Bernd's consent. However, the court determined that Meiwes had crossed all human boundaries. In the end, the court sentenced Armin Meiwes to life imprisonment. The crime had shaken the world to its core, raising many questions about consent and complicity in criminal acts. The case was closed in 2004, but Meiwes' name would forever be linked to one of the most grotesque and shocking crimes in modern history. Source of the true story: the Armin Meiwes case was opened in 2001 after the discovery of a horrific murder in which Meiwes killed and ate his victim, Bernd Jürgen. The case was closed in 2004 after Meiwes' trial and conviction, sentencing him to life imprisonment. The crime took place in Germany, in the Hesse state.